Hi, boys and girls. Today we're going to begin The Rough-Faced Girl by Rafi Martin. Once, long ago, there was a village by the shores of Lake Ontario. Here's a picture of Lake Ontario. Lake Ontario is one of the Great Lakes. Off from the other wigwams of this village stood one great huge wigwam. Painted on its sides were pictures of the sun, moon, stars, plants, trees, and animals. And inside this wigwam there was said to live a very great, rich, powerful, and supposedly handsome, invisible being. However, no one could see him except his sister, who lived there too. Many women wanted to marry this invisible being, but his sister said, only the one who can see him can marry him. And here's a picture of the wigwam. I'm not sure that makes sense to me. I want to make sure I understand. I just read that the brother is invisible, but I also read that he's handsome. So I'm wondering, if no one can see him, how do they know he's handsome? And it says, let's read that again. Let's just make sure that I'm not crazy. It says, and inside this wigwam there was said to live a very great, rich, powerful, and supposedly handsome, invisible being. However, no one could see him except his sister. I guess we'll keep reading. Now, in this village there lived a poor man who had 3 daughters. The 2 older daughters were cruel and hard-hearted, and they made their youngest sister sit by the fire and feed the flames. When the burning branches popped, the sparks fell on her. In time, her hands became burnt and scarred. Her arms, too, became rough and scarred. Even her face was marked by the fire. And her beautiful, long black hair hung ragged and charred. And those 2 older sisters laughed at her, saying, "Ha! You're ugly, you rough-faced girl." And they made her life very lonely and miserable indeed. Whew. What mean sisters to have. But I can make a connection here. I can think of another story where 2 mean older sisters make the younger sister do all the work. I am thinking of the story I already know, the story of Cinderella. It will be interesting to see how this Indian story is like the story of Cinderella. One day, these 2 older sisters went to their father and said, "Father, give us some necklaces. Give us some new buckskin dresses. Give us some pretty beaded moccasins. We're going to marry the invisible being." So their father gave them these things. Dressed in their finest, the 2 girls marched through the village. All the people pointed and stared. "Look at those beautiful girls," they said. "Surely they shall marry the invisible being." And if those 2 girls were proud and hard-hearted before, they were even prouder now. They walked haughtily through the village. At last they came to the wigwam of the invisible being, and there was his sister waiting. And they are very beautiful, at least on the outside. I wonder which sister the invisible being will choose. "Why have you come?" she asked. "We want to marry the invisible being," they answered. "That's why we're here." "If you want to marry my brother," she replied, "you have to have seen him. Tell me, have you seen the invisible being?" "Of course we've seen him," they insisted. "Can't you see how pretty we are? Can't you see the beautiful clothes we wear? Oh yes, anyone can tell that we've truly seen the invisible being." "All right," she said quietly. "If you think you've seen him, then tell me, what's his bow made of?" And suddenly her voice was swift as lightning and strong as thunder. Whew, she looks pretty tough. I wonder why his sister asks questions. "His bow," they stammered in surprise. "His bow? We know." But turning desperately to one another, they whispered, "What shall we say?" "Let's say it's the oak tree." So they said, "It's the great oak tree." "No," said the sister of the invisible being. No, she said. Oh, she saw at once how they lied. Tell me, she continued, if you think you've seen my brother, the invisible being, what's the runner of his sled made of? We know, cried the two sisters. But whispering feverishly again, they wondered, what shall we say? What shall we say? Let's say it's the green willow branch. No, said the sister when she heard. No, you have not seen my brother. Now go home. Just test us fairly, they exclaimed. We've seen him. Just don't ask us all these silly questions. And here's a picture of them whispering, trying to get the right answers. All right, said the sister of the invisible being. Come with me. And she took them back to the great wigwam and sat them in the seats furthest from the entrance, the guest seats. Soon they heard footsteps coming along the path. Then something stepped inside. Though they heard breathing, the two sisters still couldn't see a thing. Suddenly a great bow and a beaded quiver of arrows appeared in the air and were set down. But though those two girls sat there, their eyes wide, all through that night, they never saw a thing more. And in the morning, they had to go home ashamed. So they've told everybody they were going to marry him, and I don't think that's going to happen. The next day, the rough-faced girl went to her father and said, Father, may I please have some beads? May I please have a new buckskin dress and some pretty moccasins? I am going to marry the invisible being, for wherever I look, I see his face. I wonder what that means, she sees his face. But her father sighed. Daughter, he said, I am sorry. I have no beads left for you, only some little broken shells. I have no buckskin dress, and as for moccasins, all I have left are my own old, worn, cracked, stretched out pair from last year, and they're certainly much too big. But she said, whatever you can spare, I can use. So he gave her these things. I wonder why her father has so few things to give her. Is it because he gave the other stuff to her sisters? But we'll find out more tomorrow. Thanks for listening.